Hello, everyone. One of my students requested me to show this game. It's a game by Garry Kasparov, who is, well, until a few years ago, he was considered the best player of all time. Now, an argument can be made that Magnus Carlsen has replaced him because of how many years Magnus has been on the top and the quality of Magnus's opponents. But Kasparov still, if not the best ever, is still one of the greatest players to ever play the game. And this game, I actually have not seen it analyzed by any significant person in uh, YouTube personality. So it's a very interesting game. It's a very instructive game. It shows you how to attack. Uh, this is a game Kasparov played with the black pieces against a strong Armenian player. The proper way to pronounce his name is Sergei Mavsisyan, or if you want the English version, it's Sergei Mavsisyan. Um, at the time of the game, Mavsisyan was rated about 2700, so very strong player. And let's take a look. E4, c5, Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, takes, knight f6, attacking the pawn, knight c3 defense, and now the most common move on the highest level, pawn a6, the infamous or the famous Najdorf defense, named after a strong player, originally from Poland, then from Argentina, Miguel Najdorf. I don't want to get too much into the details of this opening because, well, it's I can spend hours and hours talking about it. I will not even scratch the surface. For now, let's just mention that it does a couple of things. It's a useful waiting move, trying to see what white does, and based on what white does, black will continue his next moves. It does control this square, which means that if black plays e5, for example, white does not have this check. I don't want to spend too much time explaining that and all the subtleties of that order. And another point is sometimes, like in many other Sicilians, black might want to play b5 and maybe put the bishop over here with pressure on this pawn, maybe to push further with b4. Okay, white has a number of moves here, actually wide variety. He chooses one of the most popular, bishop e3, the so-called English attack. White's plan is to put the queen here, castle long, and pawn storm on the king side. So bishop e3, e6, Kasparov builds a small center, makes perfect sense. Another move which is very common in this position is c5. Again, I do not want to get into the subtleties of this opening. Let's just take a look what happens next. White plays f3. The point of f3, before white plays queen d2, white needs to play f3. The logic here is f3 stops this knight from coming to g4, which sometimes could be a little bit annoying for this bishop. If white plays queen d2, the queen no longer controls the square, so knight g4, knight g4 becomes possible. f3 also prepares a pawn storm on the king side. Now white can play g4, for example. Kasparov responds with immediate b5. As predicted, queen d2 happens. White is getting ready to castle. White is getting ready to do things over here. Knight d7. Developing the knight might come here. The knight might come here. Depends on what happens. Occasionally, the knight can even come here. Knight d7. white castles, and bishop b7. The bishop here is not the greatest bishop in the world. It's completely restrained. However, there are a couple of points here. A, occasionally black might play d5, and the bishop supports this. But also in in all Sicilians essentially, black tries to do something on the c file, and so this move allows for the black rook, or maybe occasionally black's other rook, to come to this line and try to do something here. So bishop b7, white continues with his pawns from g4, and now if white plays g5, this knight would like to be able to move somewhere. So black plays knight b6. So A, now if g5 is played, this knight can go in this direction. B, this knight might go here at some point. And C, occasionally, if black plays b4, white does not get to put this knight on 4, which sometimes he might like to do if he wants to stop black pawns from advancing. Queen f2. I'm going to pause for a second and let you figure out why white played this move, which at first looks really strange. And the point of this move is now these two guys team up over here, and so white has a threat of taking this pawn with a discovery and opening up on this knight. Okay, Kasparov plays knight d7. He will have to play this move anyway. Now, if white pawn storms, it will take him much longer to actually break through. White plays king b1. It makes sense. The king does not want to be on this line. The king does not always want to be on this diagonal. And it makes sense to also maybe support this pawn sometimes in certain cases. Okay, as expected, the black rook shows up on the c file, rook c8, and white continues his development. And now in Sicilian, and not just the Najdorf, there is a thematic sacrifice that black makes, which is something that Kasparov does right now. I'm going to pause and see if any of you know what that sacrifice is. And the move, of course, is rook takes knight. Sometimes this knight also protects this pawn, which is attacked by this knight. So in a lot of cases, after black makes the sacrifice, he can also take this pawn. That is not the case here. But the case here is now, although black gives up 2 points worth of material, he gets an open king, white pawn structure is damaged, and black has a way to try to take advantage of this. Maybe knight here and queen here. Occasion knight here could work, maybe, followed by queen here. Maybe also this outpost is available for the other knight, something like this. And so although white is up 2 points, his king is open, the pawn structure is weak, this pawn is weak, and black has outposts on these squares. Let's see what happens next. Queen c7, attacking this pawn right away. King b2, of course, does not work. I will let you pause and figure this out. The move, of course, is knight a4, which attacks both the king and the pawn. So white plays knight e2, defending with the knight. And Kasparov, before he launches an attack, he realizes that he needs this rook to join in. So he plays bishop e7, which looks a little bit scary because he is going to castle into this pawn storm. But we'll see what happens. We'll see if his calculation proves correct. G5. White is discouraging black from castling, but Kasparov castles anyway. H4. Continuing the attack. Knight a4. And now Maksisyan comes up with a very nice move, bishop c1. Given white, given up this pawn. The question is why? Well, the answer is if Kasparov takes. Now this bishop comes here, and white is still up a pawn or a point. He has a very nice bishop, and white is going to continue his attack. So it's actually very instructive. A lot of people, especially lower level people, would just grab this pawn. Kasparov says, no, I don't need this pawn yet. You have this weakness for a long, long time. In the meantime, let me improve my attack. 95. The second knight joins the fun. Maybe he might take. Maybe he will go to this square. White attacks himself. Pawn h5. And now d5. Kasparov is challenging the center. It's a move that you in general want to play in the Sicilian defense anyway. In this specific case, it might allow this bishop to come into the attack, or it might simply open up the bishop. This diagonal. Pawn z5, queen h2, which for one move pins the knight. The problem is it only does it for one move. Now after bishop d6, black is threatening to move the knight, and so the queen has to move again, which it does, queen h3. Now Kasparov takes, which at first looks strange because white fixes his pawns. Otherwise, this is being double attacked. White fixes his pawns, and now the question is, why did Kasparov do this? Well, first, he opens up the white king even more pawn before. Either white will take, open up this, or black will take, open up this. Both moves are bad for white. So white chooses the lesser of two evils, pawn takes pawn, and now instead of taking right back, Kasparov first brings in his rook. So now he's attacking with 4 pieces. The only piece which is not attacking is the bishop on b7. Also, obviously, we have this threat. Rook c8, white stops it with king a1. If he plays rook d2, black will simply take this pawn, attacking this rook, and there is no way the rook can keep covering this square. So that means white moves the king, and now Kasparov brings in his last piece. He takes. Now white takes with this pawn. If he took with this one, there is a brilliant attacking idea by black. I'm going to pause, or I will let you pause and try to figure it out. And the move is bishop e5. The logic behind bishop e5, obviously, if he moves the king, we have a checkmate. But now a much harder question. Well, also blocking just is bad. But what if he blocks with the knight? Well, now we can take, and then we can sacrifice our queen, because after takes, rook takes is checkmate. This is why white takes with this pawn, because now he can block with the pawn after this check, which is why Kasparov plays another brilliant move. He takes here. White cannot take back, because then he cannot block with the pawn. Now this will work again. So that means this is a free pawn. That also means that the rook is being attacked. That also means that this bishop now officially joined into the attack. And white attack is a little bit too slow. White realizes that if he spends time defending the rook, black attack is going to get even stronger. So he decides to try to go after the king. But here Kasparov just gets his material back. He takes the rook. White can also take the pawn, one of these pawns right away. The point is, if white takes here, black king will just move to h8, and he's perfectly safe using white pawn as protection. And if white takes this way, the same thing will happen. Black king will sit here, being protected by the white pawn. Uh, so white decides to take the bishop first. Again, he has to play with the queen. If he takes with the rook, once again we have the same tactic. Bishop here and takes because there is no rook here. So takes. Once again, this is checkmate. So he has to take with the queen. And now Kasparov got his material back. Black is using all his pieces for attacking. White pieces are disjointed. There is a queen in the corner, which kind of helps to attack. There is rook here being blocked by a pawn. There is a bishop here, which protects the king but doesn't do much else. And for some reason, there is this white knight, which is not doing hardly anything. So after queen takes, Kasparov simply takes this pawn, bishop b4. He's threatening queen here with a fork. He is threatening bishop check. It's very, very, very hard for white to find a good move, so he takes this pawn, and of course black does not take back because it will allow counterplay. And taking with the queen, of course, takes the queen away from the attack. So we simply play king f8. This king is absolutely safe. White pawn is doing a beautiful job protecting the black king. Now there is a threat of a fork, so white stops that. But Kasparov makes his attack even stronger with b8. Now his threat is bishop here, and white cannot block. White also cannot move. So white plays bishop b2 right away, but of course it gets taken. And the problem for white is he would love to take back, but there's several ways he can get checkmated here. One is this one, check. After king takes, we have a checkmate in one. If he doesn't take, if he goes to the corner, the simplest one is check. And then this bishop retreats either here or here or here, and we have this. So he cannot take back. White tries one last trick, plays knight c4, of course threatening the fork. But Kasparov calculates that the fork is not scary because his attack is faster and more important. He just takes the rook. White gets his fork in. Kasparov takes, and here White actually resigned. The logic, of course, is if the queen is taken, black checks, and now White has to give up his queen, and black is just up 2 pieces. Or if instead White does this, black takes the knight, White takes the queen, and once again there is this bishop move. So here White resigned. It's a very instructive game. It shows you some of the important ideas in the Sicilian. Remember the concept of sacrificing the rook for the knight on the square as black. Remember the idea of pushing d5. And in general, we've seen these ideas before. Attacks on opposite sides of the board. Here, black's attack came faster, and Kasparov deservingly is considered to be one of the best players of all time. I hope you enjoyed this game. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have ideas for me of what I should do next, please leave a comment. Otherwise, please like and subscribe, and I will have more exciting material shortly.